Bad Guy Business Tips. Hi, I'm Brian Pombo. Welcome back to Brian J. Pombo Live. Today I wanted to talk about a little bit more about being a villain and how you shouldn't fear being hated by people out there, especially if you are the one in front doing the talking for your business, doing the promoting of your business, the writing for your business. If you or someone in your business is the personality behind the business, then you have to get over the fear of being a villain to somebody out there. Because if you're a villain to one person, you're going to be a hero to somebody else. And I've got a great example, one that I could have brought up last night, but I got too hung up on all my fictional examples. And one more fictional example real quick. So if you ever see the movie The Dark Knight, which is the second of the Christopher Nolan directed movies of Batman, it's called The Dark Knight. It's very specific to the entire theme. This is the one that has the Joker in it and Two-Face, and it's a very specific message. And at the end, I'm not going to ruin the movie, but the basic idea of the movie is that if you're willing to be the bad guy, if you're willing to take the blame for things that are not really yours to take the blame for, then you can achieve a whole lot. So that goes along with what we've already been talking about. By the way, if you missed last night's, go back and check out yesterday's talk that we had about villainry, and this will all tie into it. But I'm going to talk about some real life examples here. And one specific individual is a boogeyman of politics. His name was Saul Alinsky. Okay, if you're unfamiliar with Saul Alinsky, and I just got this book, big old thick book on Saul Alinsky. I don't know if this book's any good, but it was one of those. There's very few real solid pieces out there about Saul Alinsky, and he was such an interesting character. And I don't care what your politics are, if you lean left, right, or center, or otherwise. If you want to know more about how people think and how people react, you ought to read at least some of the stuff that this guy wrote. Okay, his best book out there by far is Rules for Radicals. If you haven't heard of this one, this is absolute must, especially if you got any type of political sense whatsoever. You have to read Rules for Radicals. It is an absolute must because he hits it on so many different levels. And one of the things he's doing, even in the book itself, is he's promoting himself as a villain. And he talked a lot. He talks about it in this book. I know this covers it quite a bit because I've read bits and pieces of it already. He promoted himself as a villain, as a bad guy, because the people that he was playing to loved it. So who was Saul Alinsky? Saul Alinsky, I'll just give you the brief synopsis of Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was the guy who created the concept of community organizing. And if for those of you who were paying attention to politics back when President Obama was not President Obama, but was Senator Obama running for office, he was being accused of being a community organizer, and he came out and said, yes, I am a community organizer. What does that mean? This is a term from back in the 60s that Saul Alinsky used, where he would go into a community, get involved with very specific groups, oftentimes churches or unions, and they would hire him to show them how to win their battles against their common enemies. Okay, so he did this over and over and over again because he had it down pat. He understood how to manipulate, how to terrorize, really on a basic psychological manner, how to terrorize the other side into giving in and giving way to whatever the group was after. So because of this, he got a really bad name with those who didn't like him. And he would play into it as much as possible, to the point to where he dedicates this book to Lucifer as the first great rebel. Here it is. I won't even get into it, but he dedicates the book to Satan himself. Okay, do I think that he actually thought that Lucifer was a real person and he worshipped him. I don't think so, just from understanding a little bit about Saul Alinsky, but he used it to play into this idea that he had this supernatural evil surrounding him. And it was very, very interesting how he used it, and because he understood the power that comes with being the villain. He used it to his advantage. I'm not saying you need to go out there and completely play it up and be a complete professional wrestler in the way that you handle how outrageous you can be. I mean, we already mentioned the president last night. we all know that story and where that's come from, and where it's and to an extent where it's going. But another person that Saul Alinsky knew, which is a quick part I did read on that larger book, is he knew this guy. His name was Eric Hoffer. Eric Hoffer wrote The True Believer. It's a very small book, very dense though. You could pick this book up at any point and start reading it. This is all on mass movements, good and bad. He doesn't use any judgment. He just comes straight out and says, okay, this is how they come about. And he gives examples. But you can see it doesn't matter whether it's a good movement or a bad movement. Mass movements tend to react very similarly and tend to attract very similar types of people and play into the same psychological things. This all comes back, though, to the concept of being a villain. So I'm not saying you should go out and try and be a villain. Let me just be clear. But you shouldn't fear it, because it's somewhat necessary. No matter who you can name out there that has some type of hero status, even if it's very mainstream hero status, there are people that have them pegged as villains, or at least during their own time they were pegged as villains. I mean, Jesus Christ was put to death because he was made into a massive villain. But there's extreme characters, but if you talk about the other end of the spectrum, Adolf Hitler was a huge villain and still is a huge villain, but at the same time, there's a slice of people that, because he's a villain to mainstream, they honor and respect and deify him. It takes all kinds, right? But you don't have one without the other. You don't have a villain without the followers. There's no such thing as an outright crazy villain that doesn't have followers and won't have them throughout history as long as they continue their villain status. Long after death, you're going to find people out there that think Charles Manson was a pretty cool guy. I swear you'll find these people. You can find websites about this, for crying out loud. Don't go looking that stuff up. It gives you nightmares. But that's the point. Just when it comes to your business, don't fear about splitting people up. Pick a side, stick to it, and just go for everything you can, because you're going to attract the right people for your business or for your cause or whatever you're trying to be able to push forward. So hopefully that's helpful to you. We're going to be back here tomorrow. Go check out brianjpombo.com, specifically brianjpombo.com/Amazon, which is the Amazon Proof Strategy Session. That's a specific way for you to be able to sit down and talk with me, and we can go through your business and actually find quick ways for you to completely demolish your competitors. Maybe make them a villain in the process. Okay? So go check that out, brianjpombo.com/Amazon. That link is in the description. We'll be back here tomorrow night. In the meantime, get out there and let the magic happen.